Well, Rania, I have to say you sound very educated on these topics, and that's why I was a little, I guess, surprised by Ana Kasparian's comment recently that you have to do some more research.
Yoni says, hey, Anna, you should watch Rania Khalek's podcast interview with Stephen Donziger, or Donziger. Yeah. You know, I've seen some of her reporting that I think, you know, maybe she needs to do a little bit more fact checking on.
I was just wondering what your thoughts were when you first heard that, and just if you had any response to her about that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think that she has probably, she just like in her mind, there's a group of people that are all evil and I'm one of them. Like, she's just like, oh, has some proximity to Aaron Mate and I hate him and he's a Russian agent. And I've also challenged her a couple times, really politely, I think, but I've challenged her a couple times on Twitter when she said dumb things like about Julian Assange or about Syria, or, you know, did her softball interview with Madeleine Albright, who is somebody who justified the death of 500,000 children in Iraq under the age of 5 due to U.S. sanctions because, as she said, it was worth it. Ana Kasparian interviewed Madeleine Albright and didn't bother to ask her about that. I don't know how you can consider yourself somebody on the left and not, you know, that not be your first question or one of the first questions out of your mouth if you're going to have access to a powerful figure like that. That said, you know, Ana Kasparian is like a YouTuber. You know, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but I just don't like, I'm a journalist. Like I go on the ground in places in Iraq and Syria and Lebanon, in the US, you know, and I have a whole body of work to show for that, that is fact checked and that has original reporting in it. And I mean, if somebody, like, I don't know why she thinks that she can sit in her air conditioned studio and tell somebody who's spent time in sanctioned countries and actually lives in one that I'm the one who needs to check my facts. Like, has she ever been to the Middle East? Like, I don't even know. And the crazy thing is, what she was talking about, what this was in reference to, was an interview I did with Stephen Donziger, who is he's being persecuted by the state in cooperation with Chevron for helping to win a case to get justice for these indigenous community in Ecuador that was poisoned by Chevron knowingly. And, you know, Stephen Donziger, one of her, you know, I guess fans or one of her viewers, was telling her Rania Khalek did a really good interview. It wasn't even about something I did on the Middle East. It was about Stephen Donziger, who's been interviewed by like everybody who cares about this issue. He's been interviewed by freaking Comedy Central. She seemed to not have heard of him. So this is a huge case, especially on the left. He's all over the place, not just on my show, on everyone else's shows. TYT hasn't seemed to not, you know, find a reason to have him on, or maybe they don't know about him. But, you know, someone's talking about Stephen Donziger and you're telling me to check my facts. I don't know, like maybe, and with people like Anna and Jank, like the only other thing I'll say about them is, I mean, for them to sit there and to trash countries like Syria, poor, impoverished countries that have been destroyed by their government. If you're going to talk about Syria, I don't want to hear you moralizing or wagging your finger at Syria. Syria certainly has its problems, but if Syria is going to be coming out of your mouth, the first thing you should be talking about is what your government is doing to suffocate that country. And that's not what they're talking about. And so, like, I just can't take anything they say seriously, and I just can't respect them as progressives.
You know, I think what we've seen over the last several weeks speaks to a larger rift that is, in my mind, predictable and perhaps very necessary, where TYT has really been at the front of it, but we also saw that with the Vaush-Jackson-Hinkle debate, and you see it with people like Sam Cedar and Ryan Grimm, and it's this split between this pro-empire left, these, you know, I would call them faux-gressives, or in the case of Vaush, like an anarcho-neocon, you know, with the anti-imperialist left. So people like you, Jimmy Dore, the people at the Gray Zone, Lee Camp, Abby Martin. There seems to be a very distinct split between these two different groups. And I know a lot of people out there, they're kind of treating it as this Twitter drama and unnecessary, and can't we all sort of be on the same page? I don't think that these two camps really can be on the same page for too long, because there's this existential philosophical difference in, are we supporting U.S. empire, to spread freedom and democracy? Because even though there's problems with capitalism, it's an imperfect system, but it's something we should support, versus people who understand that empire is creating all of these issues around the world. So would you agree with that, or do you think that the two camps can work together, or just what are your general thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that you're right, that this has definitely brought attention to this rift that I think has always existed. It's just maybe in the aftermath of like the failure, the collapse of the Bernie Sanders campaign, this has come to the fore, that these two sides can't really work together because we're not on the same page. We don't want the same things. And I don't think it's just the it's an imperialism issue, but it's also an issue of how to deal with the Democratic Party. Like, these are people who also are insistent that we have to work inside of this party. There's no other option. And even as we're working inside of it, like, sometimes we're not allowed to push them. Like, the force the vote issue really brought that rift to the fore as well. So yeah, I think I agree with your assessment. Like, I don't think these two sides can work together. And I think it's mostly because we're just opposed to each other. And it's the other side that's showing it, by the way, because they're the ones who are constantly attacking and name calling. And like, Ana Kasparian just randomly decided to attack me on her show, like, unprovoked. The same thing with Aaron Mate,
Glenn
the
Greenwald,
same thing.
Max Blumenthal.
Yeah. And I mean, it's the thing is, like, we're not attacking them in the same way. If anybody has attacked them, it's been to highlight like your lapse in judgment on this issue. Like, you're saying wrong things. You're promoting propaganda. You're blocking the ability of people to like form a movement outside of the Democratic Party. It's been on policy, right? It's been on policy that they've been criticized, and on their behavior, on their really disgusting behavior. Whereas from them, it's just lies and smears and name calling. I'm not saying like the anti-imperialist side is perfect and nobody said anything negative or mean that they shouldn't have. I just mean overall. That's the difference here.
But according to them, that all anti-imperialists work for Russia or Syria.
Right, which is a problem too. It's like, okay, so now anti-imperialism is bad? Like, and that's another thing I don't get is, Ana Kasparian will sit there and say, oh, Aaron Mate denies child murder, which he hasn't. But let's say he had denied child murder. That's a problem for you? I mean, you sat down with Madeleine Albright and smiled and giggled. Her child murder, her actual murdering of children did not seem to bother you. Yet, Aaron Mate just goes too far because he questions something that should be questioned. Like, it's not even consistent. Like, her behavior isn't even consistent unless you view it through the lens of a social chauvinist. Okay, maybe you want Medicare for all, which you kind of don't if you didn't support force the vote, but whatever. Maybe you want, I'll give her that. I'll be generous. Let's say she wants Medicare for all and she wants, a U.S. welfare state. That's all great, grand, and lovely. But it doesn't make much of a difference if you continue to support imperialism. And that's what I mean by social chauvinist. And, it's like, I don't care what she thinks. It's the fact that she has this massive platform. And that's what she's pushing to her viewers, and then working as a gatekeeper by smearing people who are offering a different perspective.
And, I think it does tie into a larger class issue as well, because you see people at TYT where, they're taking $20 million investments from Jeffrey Katzenberg, and also, related to that, not reporting on him criminalizing homelessness in Los Angeles. But, Emma Vigeland's parents, they're well-known lawyers who have connections to Robert Mueller.
Oh, are they?
Yep.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Robbie Yeager did a really good expose on TYT a couple of years ago, and he went into that a little bit. So it seems like a real class issue where these people are supportive of the transatlantic coastal neoliberal establishment, and really demonize any people who are anti-war or anti-censorship or maybe talking about any sort of broad working class solidarity.
Yeah, that sounds right. I mean, when I look at I guess it doesn't always go along class lines, but for the most part as a group, yeah, you can see that. Whereas like I look at the outlet I work for example, which is Breakthrough News, and we're definitely like less white, but we're also definitely class diverse. Like I come from an immigrant background. Both my parents left Lebanon because there was a civil war starting there, and they worked, crappy jobs that they hated and didn't get paid very well at their entire lives. And I still have student debt. I don't think Ana Kasparian does. So it's probably definitely easier for her to just like, none of this is to decide what's important and what's not when her life doesn't depend on certain things.